Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and welcome to the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Ramzi Ammari, Senior Vice President of Global Product Planning and Strategy at Universal Electronics, Inc. Ramzi has been Business Planning Manager at Mitsubishi Consumer Electronics of America, helping launch Mitsubishi's first plasma flat panel televisions in 1996. At UEI, Ramzi is responsible for all aspects of product development, from directing product strategy through product design, development, and market introduction. Welcome here, Ramzi.
Yes, good morning, Chuck. Thank you for
Good
having
morning.
me.
Can you, to start, I know a lot of our listeners aren't going to be familiar with Universal Electronics, but you're a very, very large company. Can you give a little background on the company and what it does?
Certainly. So Universal Electronics is a NASDAQ-listed tech company that's been in business for over 30 years. Summarizing it, Universal Electronics is a leader in universal control and sensing technologies for the smart home. So essentially what that encompasses is primarily entertainment control. So if you think of remote controls that might be sitting on your coffee table, Universal Electronics technology is in about 3 out of 5 of those remote controls. So we have a pretty strong market penetration. And our technology really doesn't just sit in remote controls. We also have technologies that reside in smart TVs, Samsung being one of our core accounts out there. So a lot of the smart hub technologies in Samsung televisions utilizes Universal Electronics technologies. And then we recently expanded our portfolio to include smart thermostats as well as sensing and security products for the residential home.
So for something like smart thermostats, would Universal typically deal with very, very large companies versus, say, smart thermostat startups?
Yeah, and the best way to describe we're a B2B business. So primarily what you will see is our technology or our products, it could be a finished product, will actually will be bundled as part of a overall solution. So again, in home entertainment, our remotes are not sold individually. They're bundled as part of a system solution. So Comcast, in their Xfinity X1 platform, utilizes the Universal Electronics XR11 voice remote control, which launched a couple of years ago and is having phenomenal success in the market. In the thermostat place, you'll see it in under ADT's brand. You may see it under Train, Nexia brands of products. So again, you'll see the finished good. It'll be a Universal Electronics product, but it'll actually be branded under a system solution that's delivered by a third party.
So basically all the companies, the major companies that provide basically consumer electronics goods, they're all very aware of you.
Absolutely. I mean, again, in entertainment control, we are kind of the worldwide leader. And the primary focus of our company is really not necessarily kind of delivering every single remote control on the marketplace. We really focus on trying to deliver an innovative, differentiated solution. So again, you'll see our products primarily in sort of the high end of the market. So again, the Samsungs, the Panasonic TV market, the consumer electronics space. But also you'll see us a lot in the service provider channel. So the DirecTV, Dish, Comcast, those are the kinds of customers that we tend to engage with and we tend to collaborate with to come out with kind of differentiated product offerings.
So before we talk about the future, which I know you're heavily involved in, you've been doing this for quite some time. What have you seen evolve over time up until now?
Be honest with you, about 5-6 years ago, we were actually sitting at a sort of a strategic planning table. And one of the things we were talking about is where do we think the industry is going and where does UEI need to kind of be wary of? What technologies do we need to be aware of and what do we need to really dive into? And oftentimes we look at, anytime you see a challenge, there's always an opportunity. So for us, it was really looking at what are the challenges that we could face over the next 5 years and how do we turn those into opportunities? And one of the areas we talked about really was the evolution of RF in the home. And again, I'm primarily focusing in home entertainment. Home entertainment traditionally has been an infrared-driven protocol. So most devices consumers had in their homes, the way to control those devices was primarily through infrared.
Yes, for anyone who doesn't know, that means they had to actually point it at the device, right?
Correct. And it's really a broadcast. In other words, you broadcast a unique signal. The device doesn't acknowledge it received it. You have to visually, the user has to visually acknowledge, okay, the TV turned on, therefore the system received the signal. So we've come, and so at the time we were, and in Universal's history was built on building a very robust universal infrared library. So the idea is that you could, and the company was founded on a brand called One for All. I don't know if you remember this brand, but One for All essentially was the first universal remote control that you could go down to the local drugstore or the local electronics store and buy a remote control to replace or consolidate the 4 or 5 remote controls that you have sitting on your coffee table. And so really it was built on having a very robust, very reliable, very comprehensive database of infrared codes for every single brand and model of TV, DVD player, VCR at the time, set-top box in your living room. So, again, as I said, 5 years ago, we sat there and said, okay, our business is primarily in infrared, but the market is going to evolve into RF. And we really made significant investments in building up an RF portfolio, understanding RF, hiring RF engineers. And in the first 2-3 years of RF really becoming very predominant in the home, and we saw a lot of companies today, most of our customers are squarely in the RF space. They still support infrared in their products, but they're definitely, the move to RF is from our perspective, it's not complete, but 80% of our customers are already on RF platforms. And so for UEI, we became a leader in that RF space, recognizing that the shift was happening and being prepared to not kind of try and compete with it, but actually to embrace it and essentially position ourselves to become a leader in that space. And today, we have the lion's share of RF-based entertainment remote control solutions. Go ahead.
Well, I say that's really interesting because the old saying, it's difficult to challenge the assumptions that made you rich. You basically essentially put your old business out of business, or that was basically rolled with the market.
Absolutely. Again, the tide and the trend in the market, as a company our size, we're not in a position to be able to, even though we were the largest provider of infrared solutions, we weren't in a position to be able to change that tide. So you better ride the wave.
That's tough to do, though, sometimes. I look at Kodak.
There are examples of companies that have struggled in that environment, but there's also a lot of companies that have actually ridden the wave and done very well with it.
So when did you recognize voice as a big deal? Because I know that's way back in your portfolio as well.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the voice one is, and I was going to get to that, RF was really the first sign. We had similar set of strategy sessions, and voice became more and more of a feature that we recognized was going to play an important role in the home. And so one of the things we wanted to do is, again, the same way that we embraced RF, we are embracing voice. And today we again have the lion's share of voice-enabled remote controls. We have voice-enabled technologies that we've developed, and I don't know whether Alan shared this with you, but we actually won an Emmy award for our contribution to technology in developing voice-enabled entertainment remote control solutions.
Yes, I saw that. So how did you recognize voice that early? 'Cause this was way back when.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. In terms of timing, I always look at technology. I've been at Universal now for 20 years. So for me, I've seen the remote control and kind of control and entertainment technology has evolved so much. But yeah, we partnered with a company many years ago, and the company was looking to do exactly what exists today. And we're talking about 2002, 2003, maybe a little later than that. And what they were trying to do is essentially
that's just for our listeners. That's before the iPhone.
Yeah. And this was about trying to create a voice-enabled solution. At the end of the day, voice is actually a very powerful medium. And if you can develop a solution that can use human speech to be able to control and manipulate stuff in your home, that's a very powerful solution. The challenge is it's very difficult to do. And so back in 2004 and 5, there was a company that we partnered with, and we believed that this could have a very compelling user experience for our customers. And the primary reason of getting into it is, again, UEI tries to push the envelope of what is possible and really driving innovation within our industry. So that's kind of part of the mantra of our CEO has been, it's all about innovation. Create new solutions, drive the industry forward, but always do it in a way that creates something that's unique and differentiated. So when we partnered with this company, the intent was to create the solution we have today. However, at the time, bandwidth was an issue. RF was certainly not, was not a standard within the industry. So trying to do it over an infrared protocol was near impossible. Trying to do it with a level of connectivity in the home was very hard to do because you need a lot of processing power to be able to do a very accurate voice decryption. So today you have cloud-based services, you have high bandwidth connectivity, you have powerful servers, powerful computing solutions that make voice very seamless and very easy for the consumer. So yeah, we recognized voice back then, but the technology wasn't at a point where we could actually deploy it successfully. And of course, fast forward to today, the technology is all there. And now the last piece of the puzzle is being able to get that user experience to the point where the consumers start embracing it. And I think one of the things that we did with Comcast and their solution is really, Comcast is a great partner in that they've really tried to identify what are the types of things where voice can be a real value add to the user experience. And we did the same thing. We looked through all of the different ways that users can interact with systems. And one of the biggest value propositions was, if you think back, before voice, and it's probably not too far back, the way you interacted and you found content on your TV was you had to kind of bring up a search feature on the UI, and then you went in and you basically hunt and pecked on a virtual keyboard on the screen to select the words or the search term that you wanted to use. And that might take you, 30 seconds to a minute if depending on how adept you are at this process. But it was very frustrating. Most consumers didn't use it. It wasn't something that they jumped at to do at that time. So with voice was a natural way to be able to deliver that sort of search experience in a matter of seconds. And so that application made perfect sense. And it also opened up a whole host of content that a lot of our customers, a lot of the service providers wanted to enable with customers. At that time, VOD has been around for a long time. A lot of service providers, cable, satellite companies can deliver video on demand and have been able to do it for years. The problem was unlocking that content required going through this pretty laborious kind of virtual keyboard hunt and peck content search. All of a sudden with voice, you could do that in a matter of seconds, and it could be, you could search, you could do context-aware search, where you could look for a game or you could look for an actor and a director and be able to do that sort of multiple search to really zero in the type of content that you want. And that really opened up the customer's video libraries. It created a user experience for the consumer that really wasn't available anywhere else. And so that has been a huge success for us.
So as a company, I'm interested in how do you know when to jump in? Basically, if you look at technology as a constantly flowing river, and you're having to come up with essentially the technology behind the products that others are going to make, how do you know when to start? And is it to develop the product, or is it to get the knowledge so that you can develop the product, say, when the technology advances enough?
That's a good challenge, and we have a concept that we coined design ovation. So we've been doing this for about 7 years now. So we have a design team. We have our own sort of design specialists within the company. We also have technologists, and one of the unique attributes is that we kind of take the marketing, which is what are the trends in the home, what technologies are available, and then we combine that with really and we combine those three things. And every year at CES, we actually introduce 4 or 5 concepts. And the intent really of those concepts, the concepts usually are forward-looking, so they're not necessarily something that we can build today. They're things that we can enable or create in 2-3 years' time. And the idea really for us at CES is to take these design innovation concepts and kind of engage in a conversation with our customers about some of these technologies. And what we look for is we're looking for, serious interest from our customers. We look for engagements that suggest a synergy where our customers start looking at that and saying, yeah, that is something we've been looking at as well. So you almost start looking for a groundswell of, is there enough interest in what we're developing? Is the technology mature enough that we could leverage it? And does the user experience provide enough value to the consumer that it becomes a no-brainer from a commercial perspective? So it's really the combination of those three have to be there in order for us to dive and really invest more heavily in those solutions. So in answer to your question, it's really, we trial out a lot of things, and from those trials, we kind of try and zero in where the intersection of the user experience, the technology, and the sort of the commercial trends intersect, and that's what kind of propels us to invest heavily in building out a solution that we can then take commercially.
So what are you seeing the state of the smart home today, and then where do you see it going? Because people are buying devices like crazy right now.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting time. It's challenging because we've been talking about home automation, and again, from our space, we've always been looking at areas in the home that we could get into, and home automation, and now it's called smart home, has really been around for a long time. The idea of automating lights and thermostats and sensors in the home and so on, and being able to connect all of those things. From my perspective, right now, a lot of consumers are out there looking at point solutions. And what I mean by that, they're trying to solve a problem in the house. If you have young kids in the house and both parents are working and the kids come off the bus, having a video camera or a smart lock that tells you when the kids got home, those would be valuable smart home solutions. And consumers see the sort of a compelling reason to go out and spend a couple of $100s to enable that capability in the home. So right now, I think a lot of consumers, households, that's what they're doing. They're going out and finding point solutions that help address specific needs in the home. I think over time, the idea of connecting all of those devices, so when the door opens, does the air conditioning turn off? Or when the windows are open, does the air conditioning turn off? When the temperature changes outside, is there functionality inside the home that then changes to accommodate that? When you switch off the alarm system, does the garage door shut? Or switch on the alarm, does the garage door shut? So those kinds of connected solutions are coming, but I'm not quite sure that we're there yet. And some of that is going to be a challenge for most consumers, because today there are so many different brands, there are so many different technologies, and being able to bridge all of those solutions is going to be a challenge for the consumer. This is where the notion of a professional installer comes in, and that's where the custom installation market has really been successful, is in bridging all of these technologies, all of these devices, and creating a single solution. The problem is it's been targeted at the high end of the market, and today the average consumer cannot look at all of these technologies and make them all work together. And so one of the drivers for us as a company is when we start looking at the things that we have in our EcoLink security business and the sensors and the technologies in that product portfolio, and then we look at the things that are happening in our RCS business, and looking at the smart thermostat we're developing there and the technologies inherent in that, and the temperature sensors and the drape controllers and the light controllers, and we're looking and say, okay, how can we create a solution that is compatible across all those products? And right now it's mostly in bridging products. So what you're seeing is a lot of bridge solutions that essentially are designed to help consumers connect different devices from different brands and make them work seamlessly through a single interface.
So conceptually, you could actually do this through your remote control, couldn't you, since everyone has one?
Yeah, yes, we are. In fact, that is one of the areas. In fact, one of the questions that I was expecting you to ask is, when did UAI get into the IoT space? And I was going to tell you that, it's almost like we've been in IoT, and we've been in the IoT space primarily through the entertainment hub. And today, the entertainment hub and sort of the IoT space are almost considered two separate spheres. And I think there's an intersect at some point where those two could merge. And we've actually had lots of conversations internally as to today there's really three screens that the consumer has available to them. They have their smartphones that they carry with them. They have their PC, desktop, laptop, whatever you want to call it. Tablet could be, it's kind of a larger screen, but it's more of an interactive device for their business. And then really the one that they spend a lot of time in front of is their television screen. And we're trying to find, is there an intersect where the TV screen, and this could apply to a lot of seniors actually, probably applies to a lot of seniors because they do spend so much time in front of the television. Could that screen become their interface to the IoT space where they can, the doorbell rings, they can see who's at the front door. If they can disarm their system, their home security system, for example, from bed through their TV screen. Those types of capabilities, I think, are potentially coming. So really, it's for us, it's trying to identify when does the remote control become that interface where you can really do a lot of things in the home through your TV, through your remote control. Again, it may apply in certain applications. And from our perspective, we don't necessarily say it's one or the other. I think it's a combination of all three. All three will exist because outside the home, really, your smartphone is the most powerful tool you have. In the home, a lot of people, like myself, I leave my phone kind of, by the front door. I don't really carry the phone with me around the house. So it's possible that you have other platforms in the home that you will interact with that may be more relevant to being able to do some IoT-related activities than your traditional phone in the home. So anyway, from, kind of bottom line is I think there's a lot of different things, a lot of different ways that the user is going to want to interact with in order to have control over their smart home.
So where in this does the new screenless device, the Echoes and the Amazon, Google Homes and so forth, where do those fit without screens now?
Yeah, and it's funny because one of the things that we're going to actually present at CES is really this idea of the consumer interacting with all of these devices. And again, it's man-machine interactions. And traditionally, it's been a very tactile-based interaction. You went to your front door, you pressed the light switch, and that's what activated lights in your home. Today, we've gotten to the point where you kind of have to pull up not today, but a lot of users see these smart devices in their homes, and they're like, hey, it's great. I can now control my lights from my phone. I can turn on the colors and change this, that, and the other. And they're essentially turning on the phone, opening up an app, logging in, and then essentially being able to turn the lights on through this sort of smartphone interface when actually it was a lot easier to just turn the lights on and off through their wall switch. Now with voice and these smart speakers in the home, I think that's a really powerful medium for consumers to be able to do very basic things that they used to rely on using tactile, but using them through voice. But there's also instances where the consumer can be, you're in bed, and I get this all the time. My kids come in and say, hey, Dad, it's kind of warm in here. Could you turn on the AC? We live in California, so that's a common complaint for us. But so the kids want to turn on the AC. Now I've got to, do I want to pull up my phone, find my thermostat controller, turn it on? Or do I want a little device that I can just click up and down that's sitting by my bed that automatically connects to my thermostat and, gives me tactile interface with something that is, a smartphone-enabled device. So it's almost like we're coming full circle where voice and touch and visual feedback, whether it's a TV screen talking back to me or a control panel or my thermostat has a little display on it, all of those things are going to have to interact seamlessly so that the user can get the experience they want without having to give up one or the other. So voice to me is a very powerful solution, but I think it needs to be used in context with a lot of other different technologies to make it ideal.
But right now, all these things, not all of them, but a lot of them, they're really disparate units. So someone has device A, someone has device B, and they're not necessarily all integrated. As you mentioned earlier about this kind of the holistic smart home, how does that get resolved?
Yeah, as I said, near term, there are competing technologies, and this is nothing new to the consumer electronics industry. If you look at, VHS versus Betamax, you've looked at, the technologies in the home, whether it's infrared. There was a lot of movements to try and standardize infrared, and it's, there's over 500 different protocols within the infrared world, and even within HDMI and CEC. If you're familiar, CEC is Consumer Electronics Control. It was an effort by the governing body within HDMI to try and create a standard for control over an HDMI cable. Unfortunately, every manufacturer out there went out and kind of leveraged that CEC spec, but then added their own extensions to it, to the point where CEC is not it didn't deliver that panacea, which is that, hey, I can now control devices through the HDMI control line. Today in IoT, we have a similar situation. You've got products that use Z-Wave. You've got products that use Zigbee. You've got LoRa technologies being implemented. You've got Thread from Nest. So these are all different protocols that trying to accomplish the same thing in the home. And I think the challenge is that, that isn't going away. That technology, that chaos is going to probably be maintained. And so companies like Google, companies like Apple, through their HomeKit program, are essentially trying to create an environment where all of these devices can go exist, but they're doing it through their interface, their UI. And, again, a lot of companies, don't want that. And now you're going to have two competing standards. You've got the Google households and you've got the Apple households, much like you have Apple phones and you have Google phones. And I think those are going to be challenges that unfortunately will divide homes, and you will have certain homes that will probably go down that Apple path and others that will go down Google. And really, you're going to get an environment where you're not going to have consistency across every environment.
But UEI, you have to play in all of those, don't you?
Well, we do, and the challenge, and for UEI, we literally build products that have Z-Wave in them. We have Zigbee products. The service provider channel is primarily focused on Zigbee-based, RF or CE-based solutions. The residential, the consumer DIY solutions are primarily based on Z-Wave. So, again, for us, one of the solutions that we are looking at is bridged products. So essentially, and the way a lot of the bigger companies are solving this is through cloud-based interaction. So in other words, every device in the home calls out to the cloud, and the two devices will connect to each other through the cloud. And that's kind of it's almost like the standardization layer is through the cloud, that these devices will have APIs that will allow them to communicate to each other, even though they're speaking different protocols, and essentially appear to the user to be compatible and working together. That is all predicated on every household having internet, the internet being on, the router being up and running, and those devices being able to communicate. As soon as that link is broken for any reason, those devices can no longer kind of operate. So for us, one of the things we're looking at is, are there things that we can do in the home where we don't rely on cloud-based solutions, that the devices can actually talk to each other in the home without having to rely on a cloud connection? And so there are ways to do that, but the way to do it today is through bridged solutions. These are solutions that essentially will translate different technologies, different protocols, and allow the devices to seamlessly connect and interact.
So do you you must have to keep looking at the future all the time based on what you do personally there. What are you seeing long range? Just more of this over time, just kind of chugging it out, or is there something else big coming along?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're so mired in trying to solve the day-to-day because we do see it. It will be a challenge for, at least for the foreseeable future. But, I look at things like artificial intelligence, augmented reality. I think those are things that we're also dabbling in and looking at. Are there, again, the smart home is, and we have the term creating smarter living, which is one of the themes that we have at CES. And it's really about it's almost like when you say, what's the future hold? It's not just about being smart, it's about being smarter. And really trying to focus on being context aware, and understanding the environment the user is in. So, and part of that is really understanding what is around them, what devices do they have, what are they trying to do, in what context are they trying to interact with the home. So for us, really, it's we have a technology called QuickSet, and QuickSet really is a technology that's designed to sit on a device in the home, and today it's on over 450 million devices, including televisions, set-top boxes, smartphones, game consoles. And the idea with the technology is it's out there discovering devices, connected devices in the home, and it discovers those devices over a multitude of technologies and protocols. So it does it over IP, it does it over the HDMI wire, it does it over RF. And the idea is by understanding what devices the consumer has, and not only what devices they have, but also what services they have, is there a way that we can, for example, create a smarter environment where if the user is trying to watch, a movie and we know that movie is available on Netflix, then we can enable that content to the user because we know they have not only do we know that they have Netflix, but we know where that Netflix app resides, whether it resides on their game consoles or their smart TV, and we can bring that capability to the user. And that interaction can be through a smart speaker. It could be through a television UI. It could be through a remote control button. So the idea is really becoming smarter and really using artificial intelligence, augmented technologies to be able to learn and understand the user environment, to be able to give the consumer a better experience when they interact with it.
Well, this future is going to be pretty interesting.
We're slowly working our way towards it, and I think there's a lot of potential. The key is just, again, trying to get to the point where we can be a little bit smarter about what we're doing out there as tech companies, in really trying to focus not about just putting technology in consumers' hands, but really giving them something that they can leverage and build on.
Great stuff. Thank you, Ramzi Ammari, and thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things.
Thank you.